Hi, welcome back to the Fastball Profits. This is our Week 11 waiver wire video. It's late Sunday night here. Week 10 is basically over. But before I get into the video, I want to take a moment to thank all of you that have been a part of the community for about the past year and a half. For those that watch our videos, subscribe, like, we appreciate that very much. We love you guys. We'd like to ask your help, though. Help us to continue to grow the community, and you can do that in a few ways. Continue to watch, obviously, is the number one thing that you can do. Comment, like, share the videos, hit the notification button so when new videos or some of our contests come out, you'll be able to get free products there. We want to take all the resources that come back and put it right back into the community to help it better. We want to get better audio visual equipment. We want to do better on our website. We're developing for you guys. Just get next season more set to help you be more competitive. Now, if you're looking at the video, you're doing it because you need somebody on the waiver wire. It could be injuries. Maybe you're like me. I looks like Cooper Kupp for the year. I've always lost AJ Green for a few games. Maybe you're just deepening your bench, or you're dealing with bye weeks next week. And next week on a bye, we have Cleveland, Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, New England, and San Francisco. The other thing that we always tell people, if you watch the video, you kind of know how this works. If not, we don't just talk about a few names that are widely available, because the guys that are highly available oftentimes aren't trustworthy in terms of production. So we'll give you multiple names that are less highly available, but guys we feel like you can trust. Also in the video, I'll talk about a few guys that I wouldn't suggest that you would pick up this week, but I know in fantasy football are going to be trending on the waiver wires out there. And so we'll give you some just information, some things to consider, some food for thoughts there. Finally, we always want to tell you guys, contextualize this information, take it, fit it into your league, make sure it works for you. If you have specific questions, put them in the bottom of the video and we'll try to answer them. I want to take a moment and thank Christian and Ryan. I was unavailable last week, so they did all my Q&A on the videos for me this week. I should be able to get back on there and answer questions at the bottom. But thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Christian, for doing that. Let's get to the first guy. Let's talk about our quarterbacks this week. So the first quarterback you may want to consider picking up this week is Marcus Mariota, who is 70% available. Now he plays the Colts, who are allowing the 13th most points to quarterbacks. That's a decent amount of points that they're allowing, but that number should be worse. And here's why that number isn't probably very accurate. It's been a bit skewed. They faced Derek Anderson of Buffalo, who scored 1 fantasy point versus them, and so that kind of padded their stats a little bit. This is not a defense that's great versus the pass. He should be able to move the ball quite a bit on there. Now, earlier in the year, Marcus had struggled quite a bit. Now, why did that happen? Why did he struggle last year and why did he struggle going into this year? I think there's a few reasons why he struggled early this season. One, injury. He hurt his elbow. I think it was the ulnar nerve in his elbow. I think it was hurt for a while. Coach had actually come out publicly and said that there was some throws he just simply couldn't make. He's had the bye week. Some time went by. I think he's getting healthier. He's making some throws. He looks more productive. I think another reason why he struggled early in the year was his schedule. His schedule wasn't very quarterback friendly. He faced the Jags, the Bills, the Ravens, some other defenses. That's going to get better, so I think his production is going to continue to improve, and we're seeing that. I think also that team's got a lot of young weapons, a lot of young wide receivers that are still figuring out things in the NFL, and they're continuing to get better. They're building rapport. They're getting their timing down. I think another major factor to go along with that is the increased use of Dion Lewis, the running back there. He's a great pass-catching back. He does great in space. Last year, he had the #1 pass catch percentage among running backs. They're getting him more involved, and you're seeing that offense pick up there. Last 3 games, Mariota has shown a lot of improvement. Now he's facing the Colts and Andrew Luck. Now, Andrew Luck is one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL. They're on 21 touchdown passes in the last 6 games. Indianapolis is winning games. They're moving the ball. They're scoring points. That's going to force him to have to keep pace with that, so I think that bodes well. Another thing I like about him, he's got good legs. Last year he had 5 rushing touchdowns, so that's just another added bonus that you get with Marcus Mariota there. So he's a guy I think is a nice play this week. If you have somebody to buy, you need to pick somebody up there. I like him, who's 70% available there. Another guy out there, and he scares me a little bit, is Eli Manning, who is 83% available. Now, he's playing Tampa Bay, who allow the 2nd most points to quarterbacks, and they're the worst defense in the NFL, allowing 34.4 points to teams going into this weekend. Now, that Tampa Bay defense actually played decent today, but it was against the Redskins. The Redskins had most of their entire offensive line is out because of injuries out for the year. They were banged up. Jameson Crowder was out. Paul Richardson's on the IR. There's so many injuries that they were dealing with. So even though it might appear that Tampa Bay defense played better today, that defense is bad. So I think this is a great matchup for him there. Now, what I would like to do is, it's not Monday night yet, but it would be really good Monday night to watch Eli Manning, that offense, just see if they're making any improvements. Was Coach Sherman able to make any adjustments, things like that? So watch tomorrow night's game, and that's going to give you a better indication just how good of a stream he is for this week coming up here. Now, he struggled all year to find the end zone, but the last 4 games, he's actually averaged over 300 passing yards per game. So I think he's a guy this week versus Tampa Bay that's going to have a decent game, at least 250 yards, probably a couple touchdowns. You know, if we're lucky, he might get you more than that, but he's a decent stream this week. Another guy is Matthew Stafford, and I know it's going to spook a lot of you guys out there. He's 25% available. last two games he struggled quite a bit, but I think it's important to remember you got to put it in the context of who he played. He played the Bears and the Vikings on the road. Both of those defenses are very good. The Vikings right now lead the NFL in sacks. They got Everson Griffin back recently, who's a great defensive end. You look at Xavier Rhodes is healthy. Today the Bears got Khalil Mack back there, and so if you look at all that, yeah, there were tough games for Stafford, but they were on the road against very, very good defenses. Now, before these two games, he had 5 consecutive games where he played really well, where he had 10 touchdown passes, only 1 interception. Now, it does hurt they lost. Golden Tate got traded away. It's a huge blow. But if you look at running backs, Kerryon Johnson and Theo Riddick, they're very active in the passing game. They're very good there. They're a very great addition to him. That helps. And you look at Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay are good wide receivers. Now he's playing Carolina, allows the 12th most points to quarterbacks. Now when Flacco, Dak Prescott, and Alex Smith faced Carolina, they didn't have very good games. But you look at the other quarterbacks that faced them, they average over 27 fantasy points per game. I think this is a good matchup. I think he rebounds this week. I like Matthew Stafford. Another guy I like out there is Mitch Trubisky. So early in there, I was hard on this guy, and I think rightfully so. Last year he struggled. In the first 3 games this year he struggled, but this is a guy who's figuring things out. He's looking better and better each week. Now he plays Minnesota, allows the 16th fewest points to quarterbacks, but actually they've been tougher than those numbers might indicate. So there's a little bit of concern for him, who he's facing. Once again, I mentioned that Everson Griffin is back, Rhodes is healthy, that defense is getting healthier, they're starting to click. The last 4 quarterbacks the Vikings have faced, including Stafford and Drew Brees, they averaged 191 passing yards per game, and in total they only had 2 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. Only really Jared Goff and Carson Wentz had good years against them. I know that Josh Allen had a decent game. He had some rushing touchdowns, but that was situational. They didn't actually move the ball that great. The yards per carry low, yards per pass were low also. So he's playing a tough Vikings defense. But on the other hand, so you got a Vikings defense that's trending up, but you also have Mitch Trubisky, who's playing really well lately. He's really turned things around there. He stepped up his game since week 3. In fact, since week 3, this guy looks legit. Since week 3, he totaled 17 touchdown passes to only 4 interceptions. 4 times he's passed over 300 yards per game. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. 4 times his quarterback rating has been over 100. So this guy's really putting it together. Him and Nagy and that offense is really starting to click there. And so I think he's a guy that you can trust. I think it also helps that even though he's facing the Vikings and they're a tougher defense, they're playing at home. What I would say is this. I think he's above average waiver claim if you need to pick him up. But because he plays the Vikings, he's a good play. He's not a great play this week, but I do like Mitch Trubisky. If you're a Bears fan, you got to love what you got in him. His future's looking brighter and brighter each week. Another guy out there, Dak Prescott. I know he's another one that's been scaring a lot of people, but I like him this week. He's 65% available versus Atlanta, getting up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. That defense is allowing over 28 points per game. Today, the rookie Baker Mayfield looked really good against him. He had his best game, throwing 3 touchdown passes. Dak Prescott, they picked up Amari Cooper. They traded for him, and they're building rapport. They look good. That's a huge bonus for him there. And so I think Dak Prescott this week, I think he's playing better and better. I think this is a good matchup. And it's easy to forget this guy used to be a rookie of the year. He's got skills there, and I think things are falling into place. They're starting to turn some things around. So I like Dak Prescott versus Atlanta. Another guy out there is Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mentioned a few weeks ago that Tampa Bay quarterbacks, they're great fantasy quarterbacks. They're not great quarterbacks per se, but in fantasy they're going to get you points. But you have to be willing to stomach a few interceptions. That's just what you have to deal with there. So he's 28% available playing the Giants. Now that Giants defense is solid. They're actually good against the pass. But those numbers, I think, are a little bit skewed. First of all, those numbers were back when they had cornerback Apple, who now has been traded, and their top defensive lineman, they traded away. And so I think that's going to be a huge decrease for that defense there. Now, if you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, he moved the ball really well today until he got into the red zone, and then he self-destructed all the time. And so he had no touchdown passes and 2 interceptions, but he did over 400 yards passing. And that's the 4th time in 7 games that he did that. He salvaged his game today. So even though he didn't throw any touchdown passes, his yards were a huge boost, and they were able to give a lot of owners a decent day out there. Talk about a few other quarterbacks that you might consider. Now, a lot of the ones I'm about to talk about, for me personally, I think are a little more risky than the ones I mentioned. The ones I mentioned, even though some of them aren't having a good year, I like their matchup. I like the way things are trending for them. But here's guys that are out there they may want to consider, but I would probably say you need to be a little bit more concerned. Josh Rosen's out there. He's 96% available playing Oakland. On paper, great matchup. Oakland gives up the 7th most points to quarterbacks. He's shown some slight improvement lately. The rookie's made some improvement, but he's far from good. Even though he has a great matchup, I think this is one that's better to avoid. I would stay away from Josh Rosen in this one if you can afford to do that. Another one is Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's 28% available, playing the Ravens, who allow the ninth fewest points to quarterbacks. Now, earlier this year, he faced them, and he had a really good game. But if you watch that game, it was the first half, he really tore it up, and then at halftime, the Ravens made adjustments and really shut them down the second half, and that was with A.J. Green in there. And this week, he's not going to have A.J. Green, and so I have a lot of concerns for him there. I'd like to stay away from Andy Dalton this one. I'm just not sure what you're going to get in that game. Another guy out there is Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is 75% available out there versus Cincinnati, allowing the fourth most points to quarterbacks. Now listen to this statistic regarding the Cincy defense. The Bengals have given up 500 yards in 3 straight games. That's the first time in the Super Bowl era that has happened. They're on pace to give up the most yards and setting a record in the NFL as far as yards allowed. This defense is terrible. Now, Flacco started the year, he played well, kind of turned things around after struggling for a few years, but it looks like he's kind of reverted back to his struggles of last year now. Another concern I have now is he kind of struggled lately, but he's questionable for Week 11 with a hip injury. In fact, he was in crutches during their bye week. And so it may not even be him starting. It could be Lamar Jackson, maybe Robert Griffin could possibly be the one there. This is a great matchup, whoever ends up starting for the Ravens. But there's so many question marks right now as far as Flacco goes, struggles that they've had, that I need to pick up a quarterback. I got Tom Brady in a league, and I'm just going to stay away from this whole Ravens situation. It's concerning. The only one I would even consider is maybe Lamar Jackson if he ends up playing in this one. We'll have to monitor this week and see how things go there. Another guy is Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles is 78% available out there. He had a nice game today in terms of fantasy. He had 320 yards and had 2 touchdown passes. It was against a weak Colts defense, the bottom third in the NFL. Next week, he plays Pittsburgh. Now, the Steelers allow the 6th most points to quarterbacks. Now, if you look at the Steelers going back to last year, they had a stretch of about 11 to 12 games where that defense was really bad. And it goes back to when they lost Ryan Shazier. They were brutal on defense, allowing about 30 points per game. But the last 5 games, that defense has begun to really turn some things around. Right now, they're up there. They've tied with the Vikings, leading the NFL in sacks, getting pressure on the quarterback. And so this defense has turned a corner there. So you add that with the fact that Blake Bortles is inconsistent. He's below average. He might be a nice volume play because he's going to have to keep pace with Ben Roethlisberger in that offense. But I have so many concerns. I don't trust Blake Bortles. That Steelers defense is doing better. There's a lot of reasons why I would probably look elsewhere for your quarterback options. And the final guy I want to talk about is Case Keenum. 83% available. Playing the Chargers allow the 14th most points to quarterbacks there. He's had a few decent fantasy games this year, but he's also had a stretch where he had 3 consecutive games where he had 0 touchdown passes with 3 interceptions. That Chargers defense is getting better and better each week, and there is an outside shot that Joey Bosa is back in this one. So you add to that the fact that that Denver defense is playing well. This could be a lower scoring game. There's a lot of reasons why I would stay away from Case Keenum in that. So those are something to consider as far as your quarterbacks go. Let's get to our wide receivers. So one of the first wide receivers you need to consider out there is Donte Moncrief, who's 90% available out there, the wide receiver for the Jaguars, versus Pittsburgh, allowing the 7th most points to wide receivers. 5 of the last 6 games, he's been very productive, averaging 83 yards per game. Clearly, he's become the #1 wide receiver for the Jaguars at this point. Today, he had 98 yards and a touchdown. Donte Moncrief is a solid option out there for you, especially against Pittsburgh, where I assume they'll need to throw a lot. What about Marquise Valdes-Scantling, the wide receiver for the Packers, 30% available out there. This week they play Seattle, allowing the 14th most points to wide receivers. You look at Geronimo Allison's on IR, Cobb is hurt, and when he has played, he's been ineffective. Valdes-Scantling has played really well lately. He's on a team that loves to throw the ball, playing with a Hall of Fame quarterback there. Now, the last 5 games, his target's been on the rise. Started the year in the first 3 games only averaging 0.67 targets per game, but now that's went up to 6.8 targets per game. In that same stretch, he's had 2 games over 100 yards. He's had 2 touchdowns. And today he led the team in targets and catches. He's become the #2 wide receiver on that team after Adams. So he's a guy you need to grab and play out there. I think we can feel very confident with his role in that offense. Now there's Cortland Sutton out there, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, 44% available, versus the Chargers, who are kind of middle of the road in terms of points allowed to wide receivers. Now, the first game after Demaryius Thomas got traded, he didn't have a great game, wasn't bad, 3 catches, 57 yards. But that was against a Houston defense that, very much like the Vikings and Pittsburgh, has really kind of turned a corner. They're playing quite a bit better there. I think things are going to open up a lot more for him in this game. Now, he's facing the Chargers, and there's cornerback Casey Hayward. Now, he's got the talent to shut down wide receivers. Casey Hayward can be a shutdown corner there. But my assumption would be going into this game is that defense and the cornerback's going to be fixated on Emmanuel Sanders as the team's #1 wide receiver. I think that he's going to see a lot of open looks out there, so I like him in this one. Yeah, Tyrell Williams, 48% available, wide receiver for the Chargers out there. Now he's playing Denver, and they've been tougher against wide receivers. He's got a tougher matchup. His target's been lower. He did have his most targets today with 6, so I think that bodes well. I think it's a positive sign for him. Looks like he's kind of settled into that number 2 role for the team there. He's a guy that I'd say is a high ceiling but a lower floor. The volume simply isn't there to trust him, but yet he's been too productive lately to simply ignore this guy. So he's a guy that you may want to stash on your bench, and in the right matchup you can play. I don't think this week is the right matchup for him, but you may want to put him on your bench for other weeks. And so this is the part of the video where I want to just cry. Okay, so we'll talk about Josh Reynolds, Rams wide receiver, 99% available out there. Cooper Kupp was helped off the field today, holding his knee. It didn't look good. It's killing me. I've got Cooper Kupp in 3 leagues, 1 leagues. I also have AJ Green. And so those injuries are really starting to mount up for me, but I guess it happens to all of us, and it's going to test my fantasy acumen, I would say. So we'll see. Now, you look at Cooper Kupp, who was out early in this year, and while he was out, Josh, playing as the 3rd wide receiver there, had 42 yards and 2 touchdowns against Green Bay. Now, I don't know if it's going to be season-ending injury there for Cooper Kupp, although initial reports are coming out from Ian Rappaport from NFL Network stating initial concern is that it's a torn ACL. But even if it's not, you look at the MCL sprain that he had, this injury, certainly he's going to miss a couple games. Josh Reynolds is a guy that you could pick up. He has value in a high-powered offense, but with Woods, Cooks, and Gurley getting so many touches, his value is not very high. So you have to keep that into account when you pick him up. Don't expect him to be as productive as Cooper Kupp there, but he's definitely a guy that you could own and play. Watch tomorrow's injury reports and see what happens with Cooper. I'm crossing my fingers he's okay. Christian Kirk. So Christian Kirk is 67% available out there versus Oakland, giving up the 15 most points to wide receivers. That Oakland defense is not good. Now he's productive. He'd been productive 5 of the last 6 games, but today he was very quiet. He's a very talented wide receiver who's young, but he's young playing with a young quarterback, and so inconsistency is always going to be an issue. Picking him up, he will have games where he'll be productive, but he's always going to be a wild card out there for you. What about Tre'Quan Smith, 67% available out there versus Philadelphia? Philadelphia gives the 4th most points up to wide receivers. Now, he wasn't targeted in a win today over the Bengals, but here's why I think that happened. They got out quickly in that game. I think at one point it was 31-7. I'm not exactly sure. They took up pretty quickly, and they didn't need to throw the ball a lot. They ran the ball quite a bit. I do have a little bit of concern about Tre'Quan Smith, and here's the one concern I do have with him is they signed Dez Bryant. Of course, we know Dez is now out for the year. They signed him, immediately got injured. He's done for the year. But it kind of begs the question for me is, do they felt like Tre'Quan Smith was not ready for that role and they had to bring in a veteran? So I like the guy. I think he's got talent. I think he plays in a great offense. He's highly available. Got a great quarterback. But with the question mark about why they brought Dez Bryant in and the fact that that offense has so many mouths to feed, he's another one that is a little bit of a wild card. You have Danny Amendola. Danny Amendola is not an exciting pick, but he is 56% available out there. He's a guy that you can start as a low-end wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues. He does get a lot of targets. He's getting a lot of catches. His yards won't be there. The TDs won't be there. But he is a nice, if you're a desperate play, he's a guy that you can look to. Let's look at Anthony Miller of the Bears. So today is 5 catches, 122 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Now his targets have increased. You look at the first 4 games, he averaged 4 targets. The last 4 games, he had 6.5. So his targets are increasing. Looks like his role is increasing. But for me, the number one reason why I think he has value is Mitch Trubisky. And Mitch Trubisky's figured things out, and as he continues to figure things out, that's going to benefit all the other players in that offense, including Anthony Miller, who is a guy that, as a rookie in preseason, the coaches and his teammates really raved about this guy and talked about how talented he was. And so he's somebody out there I think you definitely need to keep your eye on. Let's get John Ross, a wide receiver for Cincinnati. Today had 2 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown. On the year in 6 games, he's got 3 TDs. That's not bad. Former first-round pick has been hindered so far by injuries, but if he can stay healthy, he's going to get a chance to be productive with AJ Green out for a while and that Cincinnati defense being brutal. Now, AJ Green has all been ruled out of Week 11. They're already saying he's pretty much going to miss that game. That tells me if he's so far, we're not even considering him. I would imagine he's going to miss more than Week 11, probably 12, maybe even 13. So John Ross is the guy that you could pick up there. It could be a nice sleeper for you. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay wide receivers. This one's kind of an enigma for me. I don't know how to kind of break this down. Typically what I do when it comes to situations like this, I avoid them. I'll either trade out of it, I'll find another guy, but I hate to depend on it. Look at the 3 wide receivers there. We'll talk about Adam Humphries, who's 85% available, Chris Godwin, 56% available, and Deshaun Jackson, only 14% available. They all have value. This offense is constantly playing from behind. They need to throw a lot, but it's Russian roulette from week to week trying to figure out which guy you should start. And so that's why I try to avoid it, honestly. Look at early in the season, Godwin had some value, played well, but really it was Deshaun Jackson was the man. Deshaun Jackson had some great games early on, and then Adam Humphries looking better and better. It looks like he kind of became the guy after, of course, Mike Evans. Looked like maybe he's going to move in that number 2 role. And then today, Godwin goes out, has 7 catches, 103 yards. All these guys are talented. They have potential. Personally, I don't trust any of them. And so I would try to avoid, but it's hard not to stash one of these guys because all it would take is one injury, then suddenly one of these guys becomes a great play for you from week to week. And so once again, it's Russian roulette. Figure out if you want to trust one of these guys. Personally, for me, I tend to avoid this situation, but they are talented. They do have a great opportunity there, so keep those guys in mind if you're desperate. You have Maurice Harris, wide receiver for the Redskins, 63% available out there. I had a big week last week, 10 catches, 124 yards. Today he caught all 5 of his targets for 52 yards. If you're desperate, he's a decent play. He's somebody that you can play cheap in daily fantasy, and his value is specifically attached to the health of Jamison Crowder, so watch that. Let's talk about just a few more wide receivers just quickly out there. John Brown versus Cincinnati. He's only 23% available out there, but they give up the 5th most points to wide receivers. The regression of Flacco hurts. I'm not sure who the quarterback is going to be there, but this is too good of a matchup to ignore him. Another guy out there, Sterling Shepard, 25% available versus Tampa Bay, giving up the 2nd most points to wide receivers. He's on pace for over 1,000 yards. This guy's underrated. Another one out there is Michael Crabtree, 27% available. He's a guy who's a safe play, but he has a very low ceiling. Does have some nice matchups coming up there, but hasn't been very productive. Maybe a quarterback switch would help that. Maybe it's best if Flacco misses this game, and somebody like Lamar Jackson would be a huge boost to that offense. Then you have Corey Davis. Corey Davis is 27% available out there. Today versus Indianapolis, he goes out 7 catches. I'm sorry, not versus Indianapolis. Today he goes out versus the Patriots, 7 catches, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Next week he plays Indianapolis. He's got a nice matchup there. 4 times this season he's had double-digit targets. He's had 2 big games. He's a first-round pick from last year. For many people going into this season, he was really the darling in the fantasy football community. He was drafted very high in a lot of drafts and mock drafts, things like that. But his success is really directly attached to Marcus Mariota. As he's getting better and getting healthier, I think his value is going to pick up. He's a guy that you could definitely play. Another one out there is Allen Robinson, 20% available. Not highly available, but you never know if these guys are available. Don't make any assumptions. Look at Allen Robinson. He was really signed. He was brought in, paid a lot of money to be the team's number 1 wideout. Saw a lot of targets early on, but the production wasn't there. Got hurt, missed some games. Today he comes back in a big way. 6 catches, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He might be available for some of you out there, so pick him up if he is. 1 of every 5 leagues, he's out there. And there's Tyler Lockett, about 20% available. Another touchdown today. Had 7 touchdowns in 9 games versus Green Bay coming up, and that should be a higher scoring game. They allow a lot of points to wide receivers. Let's get to some running back considerations for you. So when you talk about all these players out there to pick up for waiver wire, every one of them has a different need in terms of what they fit and what they're going to do for you. Some of them are simply a 1-week fill-in for bye weeks. Others are dynasty league stashes, guys with potential that you're not going to start, but he's young and maybe he's a guy that you can keep for next season. Sometimes it's simply to strengthen your bench. Whatever it is, there's a lot of different players that have different needs. Now, it's so important, especially with more technology, more information at the fingertips of fantasy owners out there, that you need to really be proactive. If you wait till a guy's a lock to be a starter, he's probably not out there in the waiver wire because somebody's going to grab him the week before with just the very idea that maybe possibly he could move into that role. You need to always be ahead of your other competition in there. And that brings me to the first guy I want to talk about is Josh Adams. He's 88% available. You need to grab this guy. You really do. We are so adamant on him, and here's why we're so adamant you need to grab him. The opportunity is there for him. Smallwood, Clement have not been good. They've struggled. Clearly, they're not the lead backs there. This guy's young. He plays in a good offense. He's got good size. Early in the year, we were adamant about Aaron Jones. We pushed him hard and heavy. We said it's going to take a while. There were some struggles there. His carries didn't go up. But we could just see this is a guy who's productive when he touches the ball. He's electric. Things are happening. A lot of owners weren't patient with them. Some drop. Even 2 weeks ago, people are talking about getting rid of him. We said, don't do this. This guy is going to be the number 1 guy there. Now we're seeing last 3 weeks that production has picked up, and today he was huge. This is a guy that is primed in a prime position to become the number 1 running back for that offense. You need to have him on your bench. He's only a breakaway here and there, a week or 2 away from being a stud. Today he goes out ahead, 7 carries, 47 yards, 6.7 yards per carry. That's 2 weeks in a row where his production has been very solid. And the other thing I thought was interesting watching tonight's game is he was out there on the first series for Philadelphia, and so his role is going to increase. I won't be surprised next week if he gets 10, 12, 13 carries, at least maybe even more, depending on a game flow. Another guy out there is Peyton Barber, 46% available. Had a decent game today, nothing spectacular. This guy, what you see is what you get, nothing too excited. Now, in our start to the video, we said the Bucs would probably be able to stick with the run longer because they're playing the Redskins. The Redskins do not have a prolific offense. And so he had a decent day today. 7 times this year he's had double-digit carries, and he has no real competition for that job. He's going to always lead the running backs for carries there. So I think that he's a guy that has a limited ceiling. He's not highly involved in the passing game, and this is an offense that's always playing from behind. They need to throw a lot. He has value in standard leagues. If you're in deeper leagues, I would say leagues probably 14 teams or larger. So a lot of people have given up on Royce Freeman. You look at Philip Lindsay. Philip Lindsay has emerged as the lead back for Denver. Okay, he's just really emerged. He's done a great job there. And I think many view Freeman as a disappointment. He was hyped so much in the preseason, but don't forget this guy. There's a few reasons why I think that his year is not done. He's going to have value out there. One, he's got 4 touchdowns on the year. That's decent the amount of time that he's played. His 4.4 yards per carry is decent production. He was very solid in the preseason. He's young, and he's a bigger, more physical back than Philip Lindsay that I think is going to struggle at times staying healthy with all that wear and tear in his body. I think he's only about 190 pounds. He's going to have a role in that offense as soon as he comes back from his injury. And according to the coach, they believe after this week, after they come out of the bye, that he'll be back for them. So keep an eye on Royce Freeman. For you guys that have a deeper bench, you may want to stash him there. So I want to talk about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is 53% available. A lot of people are going to run after this guy, and I'm not saying you shouldn't get him, but I would put a little caution into that. Today, he went out and had a nice game, 11 carries, 53 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. That gives him 4 touchdowns the last 3 games. You can never have enough running back depth on your bench. You simply can't. Things can change so quickly in NFL. Injuries, lack of production here and there, things can happen. But before this game, he had really struggled. His yards per carry are 3.3 heading in today. Now, he'll occasionally have a good game. That's going to happen. He's got some talent there. But look at Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis has clearly become the lead back there. He's been more productive. He's more versatile in that offense. Even today, even though Dion Lewis didn't have a big game, he led that team at 20 carries. And so I think that you look at Henry, he could be somebody that you stash, might have value in his standard leagues. He has very little or no value in PPR leagues. So far for the year, he's got 8 receptions in 9 games. So I'm not saying you shouldn't pick him up, but if you do, he's going to be about kind of a running back 5 or 6 for you at this point. Let's go to the Seattle backs right there. Let's talk about Mike Davis. Mike Davis is 52% available today. Chris Carson missed the game. I do expect he's going to be back soon, maybe even next week. So look at Davis today. That's the 3rd week in a row. He's had double-digit carries. He had 11 carries, 58 yards. He had 4 catches and a touchdown, so he had a nice day there for you. But his value is going to fluctuate based on Chris Carson's availability and whether or not he plays, also based on the matchup. So Seattle is committed to running the ball, and so even with 2 guys in there, I think that there's going to be production there that you can have out of him. But he's not somebody you can trust every week. But another guy I think you need to start watching out there, especially if you're in a dynasty league, a guy that you need to watch is Rashad Penny, 87% available. First round pick, 27th overall, has been showing signs of life recently. There's things I like in his game that I'm seeing that I think are productive. He had a stretch there going back a few weeks. We had 2 games. We had 9 carries in each game. One game he had 43 yards. The other one he had 49. He had 5.1 yards per carry in those 2 games. During those same 2 games, he had 5 catches for 40 yards. Then he injures his wrist. He missed some times. They decrease his touches. But today, Chris Carson's out, and he gets more touches. He's worked back into that offense. He has 12 carries, 108 yards, and a touchdown. Looked very good. Now, there's a logjam there because with Penny, Carson, Davis, it's another problem. It's a running back by committee. I hate that. But with Carson banged up, and if Seattle's out of contention, which they're going to be very shortly, they're going to look to the future. And they drafted this guy to be their future running back. So if you're in a dynasty league, you should stash this guy. Wouldn't be surprised at the end of the season, going into next year, he becomes the #1 running back for that offense. Let's look at some other running backs out there. Let's talk about Jalen Richard, 52% available. He's maintained his PPR value. This is a guy that you really don't want to only start in PPR leagues. He's got 48 catches on the year. He's on pace for 85 today. He goes out and has 5 catches, 52 yards. Good PPR play if you're in a deeper league as a flex. Another one was Doug Martin on that same team, 54% available. He had a solid game today, 15 carries, 61 yards. He had 3 catches for 31 yards there. He's going to be leading back with Jalen Richard serving as a 3rd down or the back that's going to be out there from passing situations. And then there's Frank Gore. 73% available. So after 3 years seeing a different production, this year his productions went up. His yards per carry is over 4, sitting at 4.5. That's solid for a guy that's 35 years old. I give him all the credit in the world. Great guy. Problem I have with the situation here is if you look at Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake, it reminds me an awful lot of the Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones situation. It's so clear for people there that Aaron Jones was the better, more effective back, more explosive, that he needed to get more touches, but the coaching staff for a long time struggled to make that commitment to Jones. Now, Gore is obviously better than Williams, but if you look at Drake, last year, and even a 4-game stretch this year, when he got touches and they increased his carries and targets, his production went up. He's by far the more explosive running back between Gore, but for whatever reason, the coach loves Gore and he's committed to him. 7 games in a row, he's had double-digit carries, but he's a guy that is what I call touchdown dependent in standard leagues. Now, another guy you need to keep your eye on out there, this is a guy that's all of a sudden becoming more relevant, is Jalen Samuels. 99% available, the running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a rookie out of North Carolina State. He's got good size, nice hands. In fact, there's actually talk about him when he got drafted about being a tight end. So if you're in the Pittsburgh offense, you've got to be able to catch the ball in the backfield, and he can do that. Now, reports are starting to come in that Le'Veon Bell is not going to report. I hope that's the case because I've got James Conner in 3 leagues. So I'm hoping Le'Veon Bell sits out and doesn't report this week. But reports are starting to come in that he's not going to report. And now you look at James Conner, he's in concussion protocol. Now, I think James Conner is going to be ready for this week because, one, it happened on Thursday night. That gives him 10 days for him to clear concussion protocol and be there. With that said, though, this is a guy that you still need to keep an eye on. All it takes is an injury to him or other factors, and he's going to get more production. Last game, he had 3 catches, 22 yards, and a touchdown. Another guy, if you're very desperate, is Alfred Morris. Raheem is on IR. You look at Matt Breida, he's banged up, and because he's banged up, his production has dropped quite a bit. I think we're going to see an increase in Alfred Morris's carries. I'm not saying he's a great play for you, but he might be a desperate play out there. So watch his game tomorrow night. Let's just see what he does carry-wise and his production. Another out there is Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson is 25% available. Today he goes out. We said he'd have another good day in the passing game. He did 4 catches, 31 yards, and a touchdown. He's a guy that you're only going to play in PPR leagues, although he's on a bye next week. Just somebody to keep your eye on in the future. If you're in dynasty leagues or if you're out of it and you're looking to the future, somebody you could maybe pick up is Donte Foreman, running back for Houston. He's going to be coming back any week. Now, he's probably not going to be useful for you in the regular fantasy season, but maybe in the playoffs or if you're in a dynasty league. If you're the guys out there that are not highly available, but never assume, okay? Never assume. I've seen the strangest guys get dropped. One guy that's not highly available out there, but he is available in about 15% of leagues is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is out there for about a decent amount. You know, we'll get 6,000 or 7,000 views on these videos. And that means that for a good portion out there, Aaron Jones is available. Now, we said it early and often with a lot of disagreement. Early in the season, we had people that were adamant that Jamal Williams was going to be the guy. We said, no, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. We stuck with him. And, man, we're seeing the last 3 weeks he's taken off today. He goes out 15 carries, 145 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had 3 catches also. This is the 3rd week in a row that his carries have increased, his production has increased, and that's going to continue being the trend moving forward, barring an injury. If you're lucky enough to have him available in your league, you need to grab him. Another one is Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis, 15% available. Production was down today, but his carries of 20 were great. It's just showing you that the coaches are committed to getting him the ball. I like him out there. Let's get to some tight ends you should consider. Austin Hooper, having a really solid season. His productivity is specifically matched to his matchup. So something you need to remember, this is not a guy like Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce that you start every week and is going to be great. But with the position tight ends that's so thin, he's something you need to consider. Got Evan Engram. Evan Ingram's out there in 27% of the league playing Tampa Bay. He allows the 3rd most points to tight ends. He's going to be a great play this week. If he's available in your league, grab him and start him and feel good about that. Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle is available in 36% of leagues. His value is not as high as it was last year, even early in the season. The reason why is Eric Ebron is playing really well, and Eric Ebron's not a fluke. Eric Ebron was a former 1st-round pick, and he's been very productive in there. But with that said, if you look at Andrew Luck, the past few years, he targets his tight ends percentage-wise more than any quarterback in the NFL, and so there's going to be a lot of volume there for both of those tight ends. A couple other tight ends to consider is tight end Jeff Howerman, tight end for Denver. You look at Eric Ebron's 14% available out there. Juno Smith has had back-to-back touchdowns as Marcus Romero is improving. The offense is improving, and there's a trickle-down effect. 2 guys like Smith there, the tight end for the Titans. Just some quick defenses to consider out there if you're in a pinch. Ravens versus Cincinnati. Ravens are 46% available out there. Cincinnati without Green, not the same offense they were early in the year. Steelers versus the Jaguars. The Steelers are 46% available. The Jaguars give up the 3rd most points to defenses. Like I said earlier in the video, the last 5 games, that Steelers defense is playing a lot better. Then you have Carolina versus Detroit. Carolina's 52% available. They did lay an egg versus the Steelers, but they are going to rebound, I think. Playing the Lions allow you 10th most points to defenses. Then you have Denver versus the Chargers, who are 51% available. That Denver defense, you look at Bradley Chubb is starting to get pressure on the quarterback, and that front seven is starting to look like that Denver defense of a few years ago there. And then the final one is Arizona versus Oakland, 88% available. The Raiders allow the 8th most points to defense. And so there's some, once again, the Ravens, Steelers, Carolina, Denver, Arizona, all widely available out there. And there are guys that you could start this week. So that's a lot of information. I wish I could give you more details into why we like these guys and the research that went into it. But if you put questions on the bottom, once again, Ryan and Christian handled them last week. I'll handle them this week. Thank you guys once again for watching. We look forward to talking to you guys. God bless and take care.